All right. Welcome. Last week I thought it was the best comment ever that I have read on any video on my channel. I haven't read all the comments on all the videos on my channel, but this one uh was my favorite so far. And I'm sorry to you if you have left really thoughtful comments and I'm sure that there are some very thoughtful, wonderful comments. This one was not thoughtful. But I really liked it. It said, "You are nothing special and you are absolutely boring." I thought that was fantastic. So I'm going to really own that. I mean, that really, I think sums it up. Nothing special, for sure. Nothing special. And absolutely boring. I'll take that. Why do I like that? Because what it is that I'm wanting to share with you is not something special. It is not something exciting. And so for people who are looking for something special and exciting, I'm very happy for them to find that somewhere else because that's not at all what this is about. What it is that I am interested in sharing and what it is that I am able to share authoritatively is about actually coming to recognize your own experience in ways that are extraordinarily dull, boring, uninteresting, and yet life-changing. You don't have to read books. You don't have to watch a whole bunch of videos or podcasts. You don't have to go to exotic lands. You don't have to take exotic substances. You don't have to vomit for hours. You don't have to see fantastical things. You don't have to have big downloads from the universe or any of that. It's not necessary. What does seem to be necessary, if you would actually like to have a better experience in life, if you would like to stop the unnecessary suffering, is to actually slow down, become aware of what's really happening in your actual experience, not thinking about it, not comparing it to what you've read somewhere else or what some expert has said, but to actually observe what's really happening and to choose what you want. And that, it turns out, can change everything. Because the vast majority, if not all of the problems that people experience are due to ignorance. And I know that seems to most people, that seems like a just a impossible, extraordinary, insane claim because they say, no, that can't be the problems that people experience are due to. And then you can fill in the blank with all kinds of things. You know, the problems are because of other people. The problems are because of organizations, governments, policies, the economy, greed. The problems are due to uh, various kinds of external factors that result and cause the stress, the discomfort, the fear, the anxiety, the insecurity, and all the rest of it. And of course, if that was true, then there really wouldn't be much of anything that we could do about it other than to stress ourselves out about it and be miserable. Because if the problems are caused by all of those external factors, which we really fundamentally don't have any control over, then it's hopeless. But in my view, the good news is that that's not how it actually is. And the reason why I can say that I can speak about it authoritatively, and the reason why I am uh, so interested in it is because I know firsthand what the consequences of believing in the old way are, and what the consequences of this new realization are. And they are night and day apart and different from one another. The old way of believing that the causes of all of the problems are external is disempowerment, obviously. I mean, what power do I have over those things? If it has to do, if it's the Illuminati or the government or the 1%, or if it's men or if it's women or if it's Christians or if it's Muslims or if it's whoever it is, if that's the problem, what am I going to do about that? And what I found was the only thing I could do about it was to stress myself out and worry and get angry and fearful and reactive. And that did no good. In fact, it did all kinds of harm. Uh, so, if in my own experience, I got to a point where in my life where I realized I had reached a big dead end. I had tried so many things. I tried to help myself, and everything I tried to do to help myself actually only made things worse. I tried all of the various things that I could come up with from an early age, really. I mean, I read books, tried things, saw things in videos, tried things, read things in magazines. I mean, this was back before the real rise of the internet. And then, of course, the internet just has made that so much more accessible. All of the supposed solutions, magical potions and cures. And I'm not saying that none of those things ever work or have a time and place, but they didn't work for me, whether it was the exercise routines or the hypnosis or the various meditation practices that I tried over the years because I read about them or whatever. Uh, was none of those things help? The yoga didn't help. The various dietary hijinks didn't help. What they did was exacerbate the sense of desperation and fear and anger and anxiety because nothing was giving me the results and I was just getting worse. The stress was increasing, the symptoms were increasing, the despair was increasing, all of it was increasing. And so I found that, hey, I mean, blessedly, I realized at a certain point that that was, as I said, a very big dead end. It was going only to death very rapidly. And so I don't even know that I could say I decided. Uh, I must have. But somehow a miracle occurred, and I realized I have to approach this very differently. I have to approach this from uh, from with a very open mind. I have to stop indulging the reactive habits, the the every time I experience something unpleasant, unwanted, that I have to think about it and try to figure out what is the cause of this and what am I going to do about it? Because I realize that's the problem, not the solution. After all of those years, that's the problem, not the solution. So I did take a different approach and finally started to get different results. And that approach is uh turns out very subtle and challenging to describe because it's not really a technique. It's not a regimen. It's not a protocol. The techniques, the regimens, the protocols, they can be supportive if they are useful in any way. Uh, but fundamentally, it's not about those things. Those things at best point one to the discovery of actual empowerment, which is something that exists within you as you, and it's not something that is going to be gotten from a book or a podcast or YouTube or from an expert. Nobody can give that to you. At best, they can point you to discover that within yourself. And it's a very dangerous thing in some ways, not dangerous to you, but dangerous to all of the isms, all of the religions of various sorts. And I'm not just talking about classical religions. I'm talking about the all of the religions that people, the dogmatic approaches, these rigid approaches of right and wrong and us versus them, and we know and they don't, and we're on the path to salvation and all of that stuff, which all has its place, I suppose. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad or wrong. I'm just saying that the what I have found repeatedly is that the real solution to the problems of anxiety, despair, hopelessness, uh, anger, sense of victimization, and all of the things that come from that, all of the symptoms that result from that. That the real solution to all of that is not something that can be given to you. It is not something that uh, can be properly formulated, but rather, as I've already said, you can be pointed to it, and then it's up to you to actually accept it. And it exists within you, and it's to accept that as your foundation. It is to accept that what you're really honestly looking for has to be something that's stable, and it has to be something that is in you, and it has to be something that is actually you, because anything else can be taken away. Anything else. If you are believing that you rely upon and depend upon something, whether it's a circumstance or a condition or a person or a situation or anything of that sort, be it health related or financial or relationship, if you are believing that you need those things, then just notice that all of those things can be taken away, and they will be because they're not stable. None of those things can exist forever. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much of those things you get. I'm not saying that they're bad or wrong. You want those conditions and circumstances because you have the preference, because it's more pleasant. Fine. What, there's no problem with that. But if you believe that your okayness depends upon that, then you have just set yourself up for misery. Yeah, the basic I mean, there is a formula for suffering, which I've just described, which is to say, there are conditions for my happiness. There are conditions for my peace. There are conditions for fundamental well-being, because those conditions cannot be maintained forever. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Doesn't matter how many steps you take in a day, or how much weight you can lift, or how much broccoli you eat, or how much broccoli you don't eat. Doesn't matter about any of that. Again, I'm not saying that those things don't have their place relative in a relative world. Yes, they do. And it's absolutely fine and good to pursue those things because you want them, because you have the preference. All I'm saying is that if the foundation is not there, then none of those things can deliver on what you really ultimately want. If the foundation is there, then all of the things are fine and there's no problem whether you have them or you don't. Just notice if you say, in order for me to be okay, I need to have X amount of money. I need to have $100 million, which isn't much these days, unfortunately. Oh my goodness. So, but if if you say I need $100 million, and then, the inflation increases tomorrow, and then you say, oh, well, unfortunately, my $100 million is not enough any longer. Or you get hit by some tax bill or a medical bill or whatever. You're sued, or the banks go disappear, and the FDIC disappears, and you're these things can happen. God willing, they won't, but they can. And even if you had somehow you could really, and I don't know of any way you could do this, but even if somehow you could get absolute security that you will always have the money for every single day of your life here on Earth, you're still faced with this uncomfortable fact, which is that I cannot think of a single human being who has never who has come into existence who hasn't winked out of existence. In other words, you can't take the money with you into the afterlife. So, and it does not guard against the that big transition in which the body ceases to be animated and alive, or at least it takes on a different kind of life, and it's no longer, it's now food for the worms instead of being a vehicle for the soul. And so at that point, we all are faced with this uncomfortable reality, which is we don't have that security because we can't control those conditions. So if you have any conditions, then it's a recipe for suffering. It only can deliver fear, anxiety, worry, stress, anger, impatience, and all those kinds of things. Regret. So I'm proposing, because it's my own experience, that there is another way, which is, and it should be perfectly clear based on what I've said, but I'll spell it out, which is to uh, make your foundation in life a foundation which is unconditional. I thought it was going to go a totally different direction today. I had no idea it was going to go this way. Well, live and learn. This is going to be great on YouTube, by the way. It's going to go so well. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, it's like 20 some minutes in, and for people who don't already know what something, don't have a clue, then they could not have stuck around until now because it makes no sense. There's no context. I haven't set it up, but so be it. Because this is this is not a message for everybody. This is a message for you. This is a message for you who, you've tried whatever you've tried, and it didn't satisfy you. You still have been struggling with the whatever it is for you. Whatever it is that whatever makes up your particular special kind of suffering. And in this world, we're taught, go around and find the solution to your kind of suffering. If you can just describe and label and name your suffering, if you can find the right group or camp who will validate you, who will say, we're the whatever camp, we're the ones who believe in whatever it is that you got a name for everything these days, right? I mean, you're ADHD or neurodivergent, you got IBS-C or IBS-D, you got gluten intolerant, celiac, carnivore, you got, you know, uh, what do you got? You got, oh my God, I don't even know. I can't even keep up. Can't even keep up. And it's only gonna get worse. So, but you have, in some way or another, you have realized that it's not doing it for you. You tried whatever you tried, and somehow, and there was an intelligence in you which recognized that that's not the answer. And part of it is because you didn't even know what the real problem was. All you had was a story about it. I mean, granted, you knew that you were experiencing something that you didn't like. Whatever, whatever that was, whatever words you would use to describe it, you knew that. I mean, if somebody said, well, no, you're crazy, you're not experiencing that, you'd say, well, no, you're crazy. I know I'm experiencing it. So there's that. But you didn't actually know really, honestly, truly what it was. Not really. You just had a story about it. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate. I guess I would actually look at it as fortunate. So I'll say fortunately, that story or those stories didn't give you the outcome that you wanted. Not totally. And the surprising thing about that is that that's true regardless of whether you got the outcome that you thought you wanted. Because some of us, we got some of the outcomes that we thought we wanted, and then some of us, we got some of the outcomes or we didn't get some of the outcomes that we thought we wanted, right? So for some of us, we thought, oh, the problem is I just don't have enough money. And then we got a lot of money. And then we're like, well, scratching our heads. Well, gee, that didn't seem to fix the problem. And then others of us, we thought the problem was whatever we thought it was. And we didn't get the solution that we thought we needed to that problem. But in either case, we still have what we perceive to be as a problem. And there's in either way, there's for everybody here, anybody who could stick around this long, there's an intelligence in you which tells you the answer to this problem is not in the directions that I've pursued in the past. It's not going to be found in those things. It's not going to be found whether I get the answers that I think I need or not. And again, I'm not suggesting that there might not be more or less pleasant experiences. And I'm not suggesting that you need to or should necessarily give up on any preferences that you have. It's the only thing is, if you think that those things are going to be your salvation, that's the problem. Because then you've made your foundation something that you cannot control, something that comes and goes, something that changes, something that is external to you. And fundamentally, that pulls you out of center and it is disempowering to you, and it cannot help but create the fear and anxiety and anger and frustration and all the rest of those things, which, whatever else might be going on, those things make it far worse. Because, sure, you might have physical symptoms which you experience as unpleasant. You might have uh, financial scarcity, which can be stressful. You might have uh, difficult relationship dynamics. So all of that might be there, and you might have preferences to change those things so they're more pleasant for you. And again, I'm not suggesting that's inherently problematic, but if you believe that any of those things, if you believe that you need to have to manifest your preferences in order to be fundamentally okay, if you believe that those things are your salvation, then what you've just done is add into the mix the all those things that I mentioned earlier, the anger, the fear, the worry, the anxiety, the regret, the impatience, the distress of all kinds. And that is the real problem. And it's optional, it's not required. And the amazing thing is that that only serves to, in most cases, to make what you prefer even further out of reach. I mean, when it comes to relationships, for example, I mean, what would you say, what would you say are the chances of you experiencing the satisfaction in the context of relationship, any kind of relationship, romantic relationship, relationship with children, relationship with parents, relationship with neighbors, relationships with friends, whatever, relationship with government workers, anything, any kind of relationship. What would you say is the chance of you having the the kind of satisfaction that you want in relationship if you're internally experiencing fear, anger, regret, resentment, all of these things? it's pretty much zero. I mean, there's no way you can experience the satisfaction that you want if that's what your inner experience is, and your inner experience cannot help but be that if your foundation is, I need these conditions in order to be okay. Because granted, every once in a while, the conditions might be met, whether that's for a minute or an hour or a day or a week. But I don't know about you, but I've noticed that those conditions don't last. And uh, so, therefore, there could be a momentary sense of, oh, this is so nice. Finally, hallelujah, I've arrived. I'm saved forever and ever. It's going to be like this. Oh, but you know it's not. I mean, in the back of your mind, you know it won't be like that forever because you've been around for a while. You know it's ups and downs and tenuous truces and alliances and all these kinds of things. And the moment that somebody else is feeling unpleasant in some way, then they're going to be sure to let you know. And then also, you're other people are just not going to conform consistently to your expectations. You think, oh, they should love and adore me and uh, constantly be, showering their affection and approval and validation. Any opinion that I have, they should just say, oh, that you are so brilliant and so right. And uh, that doesn't happen. So, in the context of relationship, I think it's really obvious that if you have conditions for your fundamental okayness and salvation in the context of relationships, you are undermining your ability to experience even what you prefer in relationship. I I could be wrong. I have been known to be wrong on occasion, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about that one. So if you want to have better relationships, I am pretty sure that having as your foundation unconditional acceptance, peace, love, harmony within yourself is essential. I'm almost certain of that. So that's relationships. When it comes to health, I think the same is true. Pretty sure. I mean, I think there's pretty good evidence that negative stress, distress is a significant contributing factor in incredible number of poor health outcomes. So if you want to, if you want to create the conditions that are optimal for greater health, then having that you want to minimize the amount of distress that you experience. I mean, all of that, and let's say that your financial goal, sorry, just actually not financial goal, your health goal is to have six pack abs and the physique. Well, even there, I mean, distress is it, high levels of distress correlates to high level of stress hormones, so called, which are catabolic. Therefore, they don't help with muscle growth. They do the opposite, right? I mean, if like all of the cortisol and adrenaline pumping through the system, they break down muscle. So if you want to have the physique, if you want to, be trim and muscular, the distress is not for you. So, heart health, brain health, pretty much probably any type of organ health, bone health, skin health, whatever you want, any of those things, distress is not going to be helpful. It's going to be problematic. And what I'm saying, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Um, if your foundation is that you have conditions, you, you say, I can only be satisfied with my health if I have a particular physique. I can only be satisfied with my experience of health if I can do XYZ activity. Whatever those conditions are, you have therefore created the conditions which are optimized for distress, which undermines your very preferences. Does that make sense? So I'm pretty sure that in terms of any kind of health goals or uh, preferences, that actually having an unconditional foundation in which you have the preferences, totally fine. I'd like to have six-pack abs. Great. But my my happiness, my freedom, my peace, my my okayness is absolutely unconditional. It doesn't matter if I've got a big gut or not. I have a preference, but I am in no way going to be distressed because the conditions are otherwise. And I know people don't like this. They get upset. They say, well, no, 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 that can't be. And they try to come up with all kinds of scenarios in which it wouldn't be true. But I am pretty sure that having that unconditional foundation is the only intelligent thing to do, because anything else is actually counter to what you want, crazy as that might seem. Now, when it comes to finances, I'm pretty sure there is evidence that there are people who have a lot of money who where they have a conditional foundation. So I don't think I think it's a strange exception. I think that this rule does not apply to finance. I, 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 I'm just thinking off the cuff here, so I reserve the right to change my mind about it. But even so, it does not follow that. Although I think many people make this mistake, many people I think make the mistake of thinking, well, if I don't stress about money, then I'll just lie around and I won't do anything, and I'll just die toothless, homeless under the bridge. I don't think that's true. I mean, it could be true if that was what was true for you. If if you didn't have the preference to have some uh, a, a, a more money, more wealth, that wasn't a preference of yours, and therefore you were perfectly happy just to lie around and do nothing while the bank repossessed your home and you were evicted and so forth. If that was true for you, then that would probably be the outcome, unless it wasn't. I mean, because it wouldn't have to be. Because, li life is an interesting thing. It can go in all kinds of different directions that you wouldn't expect, that you wouldn't anticipate. Uh, but it's a possibility, sure. But is that actually true for you? Probably not. So I think it's a mistake that people make when they imagine, well, if I wasn't stressing myself all the time about money, uh, then I would just end up penniless and nothing to do for it. I'd just be suffering so much. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. If Because the point is that the suffering is optional. Suffering is because you have wrongly made your foundation in life something that is conditional. If you say, my my happiness depends upon having $100 million, then if you have $99 million, you're unhappy. And if that's your foundation, guess what? When you have $100 million, you'll still be unhappy because you practiced it all the way. I'm so unhappy. I'll be happy when I get $100 million. You get $100 million, there's that brief moment where you say, woohoo, I did it. And then you're like, uh-oh. I might lose it, or maybe it's not enough. I need to do more. I need to have more. What's wrong? So if you've practiced it, you're going to be really good at it. Notice that, right? I mean, whatever you have practiced in your life, you get good at it. Maybe you're not the best, but you're relatively much better at it than you used to be because you've practiced it. I mean, you're a really good worrier if you worry a lot, right? So for people who have those conditions and therefore they are unhappy and suffering, then usually having the conditions met is not sufficient to end the suffering. And even if it is, then the suffering, the end, it's temporary because it's conditional. As soon as the conditions are not there, then the suffering has to come back. So even with finance, even though it seems like there are people who have a lot of money who have a conditional foundation, uh, I can't recommend having a conditional foundation because I think that it just does not serve you and what really matters to you. So here's what I would propose. Now, I think that uh, there's something that I have talked about many, many, many times, and you might think you already understand it and you know everything about it, but I think you don't. I mean, if you do, then um, please host some meetings and I'll attend them because I haven't I don't really feel like I know everything there is to know about it. Um, but it is this that knowing what you want seems to me to be of very critical importance. Because if you don't know what you want, then you don't know where to direct your attention. And the the chances are then that your attention is just simply going to go to whatever has the most intensity, which would probably, in many cases, end up being a lot of fear, worry, anger, resentment, regret, guilt, shame, anxiety, and other variations on that theme. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, I'm just pointing it out, and then you could just take a look at your own experience and notice, does that seem to be true? Like, just think back over the last couple of days. If you're not clear and intentional about what's really important to you, and in many cases, even if you are, just notice, where does your attention go throughout the day? It goes to, preferentially, it goes to a lot of that kind of stuff, doesn't it? Unless you're really excited about something, right? I mean, if you're really excited about something, then it could go to that, right? You like, ooh, I'm gonna, I got this great opportunity, this great thing that's gonna happen. I'm so close to it. I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm got my plan. I gotta, rehearse my plan. I'm gonna start taking action on my plan. I'm gonna get the things. I'm gonna have the great experience. I'm going on vacation. I'm gonna make the money. I'm gonna, get the love of my life. Whatever it is, you got these plans, and you can get excited about it so that you could have that too. But again, it's the intensity. If you are not clear about what's actually important to you, then your attention tends to just go to whatever has the most intensity. And oftentimes that tends to be the things that we don't want, except and unless we get excited about something that we think we want, which, by the way, if you haven't done the work to get clear on what you want, chances are that's not really what you want. So you're just squandering your energy on things that you don't want. Either way, even if you're excited about it, chances are it's not really what you want. And then there's all the things that you're stressed about, which is definitely not what you want. So your attention just gets pulled to all these things that you don't want. So I've proposed something to you in my own strange way, uh, which for you to consider, which is that maybe what you want, and this is only for you to consider. Don't don't believe this and run with it just because I've proposed it. You have to actually look for yourself. Because if it's not true for you, then it would be foolish and ultimately uh, pointless for you to actually work with this. So you just take a look and find out. My proposal, though, is that I think you'll probably find that what you really want is an unconditional foundation in life. Because that's reliable and that's totally within your power. You can choose that and you can choose it any time, in any condition, any circumstance. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if you have the $100 million, you don't have the $1 million, you have the $100 million, but you're losing the $100 million. It doesn't matter about any of that. It doesn't matter if, there's nobody to love you, or there is somebody to love you, or there was somebody to love you, but they no longer love you. It doesn't, none of that matters. I'm not saying that I'm saying none of that matters in the context, in the specific context of you being able to access that unconditional foundation within yourself. I'm not meaning to suggest that none of those things matter in any context or in any way. I mean, of course they do, in the sense that you might have preferences, and that's totally fine. Again, I'm just saying that as a foundation, as a priority to know what really matters, I'm proposing probably what you want is an unconditional foundation that is within you, because that's totally in your power. It's always accessible. There are no conditions for it. It's just a matter of, first of all, having clarity that that's what really matters to you. And then secondly, remembering to choose that. And I think that's all I have to say on the matter. So, but if you have thoughts or questions about any of that that you'd like to uh, explore together, then I welcome you to put those in the chat, and then we can do that. And if you don't have anything, then um, that's fantastic too, and I can go take a nap. Probably not. Probably wouldn't take a nap, but think consider it for a moment and no pressure, because honestly, if you don't have anything, then that's good for all of us, I suppose. But if you do have something, then it would be good to explore that. Oh, another note taker just joined. A little late. Oh, I know probably why. Got confused because the time zone. Because you changed time in Europe, didn't you? Yeah, I think we're gonna do that soon here in the U.S. Except for in the places where they don't, which is confusing. I don't know if you know that. Some places they don't. Um, just a little trivia for you, like Indianapolis, I think, and somewhere in Arizona. There's a couple places they don't do it. No, not all of Indiana, just the city of Indianapolis. And I think there's a couple other places somewhere in Indiana, but it's all of Arizona, or is it just parts of Arizona? It could be all of Arizona. Anyway, it's very, very, very confusing, I'm sure. So some people say they're thinking of questions. Ah, here we go. Is an unconditional foundation the one thing that doesn't require any effort? Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a great question because I think a lot of the times um, uh, this seems confusing at first because uh, there is because habit makes what is already habitual and familiar uh, seem to be effortless, even though technically it does involve effort. And then it can seem as though uh, not indulging that habit involves effort. What I mean, I'll give you an example. So let's say that um, a person has a habit of reacting with anger anytime that somebody disagrees with them. Okay. So for that person, it's a well-rehearsed habit. So they walk into a room and they say, uh, I'm the most intelligent and best looking person on the planet. And someone says, you're a bozo and an idiot. And, you got and your nose is too big. And they get upset about it. They get angry. This is the automatic, well-rehearsed reaction. And this person, uh, has done this so many times and it gets them into trouble in all kinds of ways. It's unpleasant and it's causing, high blood pressure and nobody wants to have anything to do with them and it's caused them financial ruin and so many problems. And uh, the person therefore realizes, okay, maybe there, maybe it's something I'm doing. Maybe maybe there's a way in which I could change this. So they start to look within themselves and they start to notice, oh, isn't that interesting? I have this reaction of anger. And there's no really good reason why that should have to be so. I mean, really, all that's happened is, some sounds, blah, 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 and that's pretty much it. So there's no reason why I should get angry. I mean, if somebody else has a different opinion from mine, it's nothing really to me. Uh, so they might have that realization. But then, in order to make that change, to dissolve the old conditioning of the reactivity, does usually require that the person uh, slows down enough to become aware sufficiently of what that internal process is so that they can start to make different choices. And in this particular case, notice that the fundamental choice that this person needs to make is to not do what they usually do. So they don't have to actually do something different. They just need to be aware enough of what they do to not do it. Because the reaction of anger is doing something. It's doing something that's totally unnecessary. There's nothing that requires any response at all, right? This person walks into a room, they say, "Look at me, I'm so fantastic." And somebody says, and nothing is required, nothing whatsoever. I mean, it's like well, nothing at all. So, but this person's habitual reaction is to do something within themselves, if nothing else. I mean, even if they don't shout and scream and break things, even within themselves, there's an activity that's taking place. In order to change that, the person doesn't need to do something. He just needs to stop doing what he's already doing. So I will use I often use this example. If I make a fist, then there I'm making effort to do this. So in order to release the fist, all that's necessary is I stop making the effort. Eventually, I mean, it's a funny thing because at first the habit is there, keeping this position, but presumably over enough time that all of that would be released, and eventually there would be again an open hand. But if I'm focused on the outcome, if I have in mind that the outcome should be an open hand, then I might think, well, in order to get that result, I need to now use effort to pry it open. So I'm using effort with my other hand to pry open the fist to get an outcome. So that's using effort against existing effort. But that's not necessary. All that's necessary is to become aware of the effort that's being made and then to cease making that effort. And then to trust in that. Just to trust that nature will take its course as long as I'm not feeding into the existing habit, it will eventually completely undo itself. So it's not about doing something, it's about not doing, but that not doing requires awareness. So for this person who I'm this imaginary person who reacts with anger, the habit is to react with anger. That's a doing. But because it's so well rehearsed, unless and until the person becomes sufficiently aware of how they do it, that automatic pattern is very likely to continue to play out. So what's required is to slow down sufficiently to become conscious so that there can be enough awareness to not indulge those habits. And oftentimes at first that slowing down and becoming aware is easy to mistake as effort. It's not effort. If you really examine it, you'll see that there is no effort whatsoever involved. It's the opposite. It reduces the amount of effort that's automatically being made. But from the perspective of being automatic and unconscious, it seems, in many cases, it will seem to the person that that is an effort, even though it's not. So, uh, I thought that was a really great question. I appreciate that question because that does come up a lot from people. Oh, there's so many questions now. Okay. Uh, Okay, so somebody says, how do you come back to your center when you're in a group of people and dark intrusive thoughts come online in the mind? How do you come back to the love of yourself and others in the moment? Ah, yeah, great question. Well, I mean, so I would say the so the habit is to believe that something needs to be done. So, but if you notice, what's happened is not actually what you think happened. So you say you're in a group of people and dark intrusive thoughts come online in the mind, and you want to come back to your center. So the idea is that you've somehow gotten out of center, and then you need to do something to correct that. But notice in reality, I mean, in practical terms, every time you've tried to do that, it hasn't worked, not totally satisfactorily. And the reason why is that it was a misunderstanding from the beginning because actually you're not out of center. All that happened is that some thoughts occurred. The thoughts occur in you and don't in any way affect you. You are unaffected by the thoughts, you're unaffected by the feelings, you're unaffected by the sensations, you're unaffected by the mental images, you're unaffected by anything and everything. So the thoughts occur, and then there's another thought that comes after those thoughts that says, these thoughts mean that I'm out of center and I need to do something to get back to center. And then if you believe that thought, then you believe the next thought, which says, well, what do I do? And then you'll believe the next thought that proposes something. And then on and on it goes, unless or until you actually observe that there's nothing whatsoever that has happened to you. You have not come out of center. There, you are simply here. And in order to recognize that and acknowledge that, all that's necessary is just for in a single instant, just to drop the fixation on all the thoughts and just to notice the truth of what's happening. So then, how do you come back to the love of yourself and others in the moment? I would say that the love of self and others is none other than what you are. You are that love. Uh, that love is not a particular feeling. So there are feelings that we might call love, but I would say that those feelings that you might call love, those are, uh, those come and go. You you could probably develop the skill of producing those feelings more readily and more often if that was important to you. But personally, it's not something that interests me. Um, I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't be something that interests anybody, but it just doesn't interest me. So I don't have much to say about that. But from my perspective, the truth of love, what I would call unconditional love, is already always the case. It's already what you are. And so therefore, same answer is the answer to the first part of this, which is it's just about acknowledging that and noticing that there's a thought that says, oh no, I'm not um, loving myself or others. I need to do something in order to be loving toward myself and others. And then the evidence, the evidence will be there in thought. This is, see, I know that it's true because I'm not feeling the way that I should feel, and I'm having these thoughts. And that's all evidence that there's something wrong, and I'm not loving. Um, but actually, those are just thoughts. And so the solution that I can propose is just to for an instant, just drop the fixation on all of that. Instead of believing the thoughts, you could just notice that the actual reality is that you're already here right now. And I would call that unconditional love. And so there's nothing that needs to be done for it or to get it or to come back to it. Uh, it's just already the case. That's my thought about that. All right. If I'm missing your, I don't know why this is if I miss your comments, just let me know. I'm not trying to miss them, but the scrolling function here is not very it's not working very well for me. But I says I recently discovered the one thing I've been seeking for decades. Although I'm truly passionate about it, the industry is demanding, and I've already faced several setbacks dealing with real sharks trying to sell me courses that cost between 22,000 and 60,000. Just trying to find the right training program to get started. What would be the best approach in this situation? I'm relying on books for now, but I'll definitely need a comprehensive program in order to gain expertise. Um, well, without, I can only offer a somewhat generalized and generic response to that because I don't have enough specifics. If you wanted to let me know more specifics about the what it is the that you're referring to, the topic or industry or niche or whatever it is, then I may or may not be able to offer more specifics. But I can say in general, um, I think it's useful to question. So there are we have we have all kinds of beliefs uh, that we usually don't recognize as beliefs, but they are beliefs, and it's useful, I think it's useful to question them, even if, maybe even especially if you think that it's just true. So, uh, so you say that um, you you definitely need a comprehensive program in order to gain expertise. Is that true? And you might say, yes, it's true, but how do you know that it's true? Are there any conditions under which it would not be true? So that's the main thing is, you can go through. So I think it's useful in a situation like this to write out all of your objections and thoughts and fears and worries and stresses about the whole thing, and then you can just go through and uh, find the uh, you can identify the there are a lot of hidden beliefs that you can parse out. If you want to take my $22,000 course on this topic, I'm happy to enroll you in that. Just contact me. It's a joke. But but you could, for example, uh, you could go through the and find the presuppositions. So you could ask, what would have to be true for this to be true? So you say, I'll definitely need a comprehensive program in order to gain expertise. And I'm just singling that part out, but not to say that there aren't lots of presuppositions in the other things that you wrote. But if we just look at that, so I'll definitely need a comprehensive program in order to gain expertise. So presupposes, in order for this to be true, it would have to be true that um, that a comprehensive program exists or could exist. Um, it presupposes that it's possible to gain expertise. It presupposes that it is, in fact, um, necessary to gain expertise. Presupposes that you are capable of gaining expertise. Uh, I can go on and on. There's all kinds of presuppositions in this. And so those are the things that would have to be true in order for this to be true. And then you can start to look at each of those and just ask yourself, well, is that actually true? And like I said earlier, might there be, what other conditions might there be in which those things would not be true or where something else might be true? Uh, because that will just start to help you to realize you have more options. That's the main point. If you think uh, this is the thing for me. This is the thing I have to do in life. It's my purpose in life. It's my passion in life. But oh no, unfortunately, in order to be able to do it, I there are all of these requirements. Then then if you believe that, then you're going to be trying to find ways that you can meet all of those requirements. But if those requirements are false, then you're stressing yourself out trying to accomplish things that are not really necessary. So it's useful to start from the very beginning, questioning all those presuppositions so that you at least see that you have options. You know, might there be other ways to approach this? Might some of these things not actually be requirements? Might there be certain conditions in which I could do it differently? So that's the main thing that I would recommend. All right, so we've got, is it just a matter of choosing over and over again in the face of habitual resistance? For example, a kid is being demanded, and I repeat, I choose peace now. Being demanding. Oh, I see. A kid is being demanding. Your child, I suppose. And I repeat, I choose peace now, despite the feeling. Then practice active relaxation until the kid, or the resistant thoughts go away. Or is it catching it before the feeling thoughts even start? Um, well, I would say yeah, great question. Uh, so the first thing is to know what you want. So you're saying peace. So I'm assuming that you've done the work to get clarity that that's what you want. If you haven't, then uh, that would be the first step, is to be clear what is most important to you. Assuming that you've done that work and you know that that's what's most important to you, then I think that just okay, two things. So one would be to to have some kind of reference for where that is, and to be able to recognize it. So if you say, you know, what's most important to me is peace, then you would need to know something about peace. You need to know, where is this peace? What is the nature of this peace? How do I access this peace? How do I not access the peace? Uh, how do I know if I'm not accessing peace? How do I know if I am accessing peace? You want to have that kind of, you want to be able to have sufficient clarity about it that you would know uh, how to make that choice in the moment. Um, so step one is to know what you want. Step two is to know how to uh, actually choose it. And then it would just be a matter of choosing it. So saying, if your strategy is to repeat, I choose peace now, um, I mean, I suppose that could be a strategy that might work for you. I don't think that would work for me. Um, but I can't say that it wouldn't work for you. It just doesn't strike me as a particularly promising strategy. Um, I think it's just a matter of, as I said, you have to know what you want, and then you have to know how to choose it. Because if it's just this abstract thing like, oh, it's peace, but then you don't know anything about peace. You don't know where's peace? How do I connect to peace? What are the qualities of peace? If you don't know any of that, then I don't think saying I choose peace now would help, because you don't really know what peace is in that scenario. If you do know something about peace, then I don't think that saying over and over I choose peace is likely to be necessary or helpful. Although I can't say that it absolutely couldn't be. Maybe you would find it helpful. I don't think it would be. Uh, but I don't think it doesn't seem necessary because if you know what you want and you know something about it, then I would think that saying to yourself, I choose peace now, wouldn't help you. All that would be necessary is just to find that within yourself. And then uh, I would say to view the situation, whatever's happening, instead of it being your enemy, instead of what do you say, the kid being demanding. Um, Technically, they're not being demanding. They are they're making demands. Um, so the kid making demands is not the problem. The kid making demands actually is an opportunity for you to further clarify your direct knowledge of peace. Because because if that's the most important thing to you, if peace is what's most important, then uh, anything that allows you to get more clarity about peace is actually helpful for you. Uh, Not that I'm suggesting you need to seek out more of those opportunities because life will present them to you. Uh, but when they do happen, I would just suggest, based on my own experience, I would suggest noticing the tendency in to think that I just need to get through this, or I need peace as a strategy in order to get through this, or I need peace to help me transform this into a nice experience. Whereas I would say probably a more helpful way to perceive it is that what I want is unconditionally present always at the heart of being. It is what I am. Therefore, nothing can ever be uh, a, uh, a an actual obstacle to that because there is no distance whatsoever between me and what it is that I want. I am that. So whatever it is that is occurring can't get between me and me. I am already this. So I'm already this piece. So if I'm perceiving otherwise, then it's just an opportunity for me to get clearer about the truth of the piece that I am. And so that would be one thing that I would recommend is just to get clearer on that, I think. Uh, Somebody says, I was wondering, is there any kind of community or group that people from here stay connected in? I have a, right, if you're not on, well, you are on my, you must be on my mailing list if you're here. Um, so right at this moment, I don't have any opportunities for joining in any of the programs that I offer, which some of which do have some community aspects. But since you're on my email list, uh, you will get notified when those opportunities are made available again. Somebody says, can this mean just becoming aware of habits will automatically initiate divine intelligence to come? Uh, Here we go. To come through. Um, yes, yeah, but notice there's a difference between being actually being aware and having a name for something. So being aware is prior being aware is subtler than having a name for something. Having a name for something uh, is a way to try and get a handle on something without having sufficient awareness of it. So I point out that distinction because if you say, well, I'm aware of it and it just keeps on, I keep on having problems, then I would say, then you're not aware of it. You have, you're aware of a idea or a thought or a label. So so awareness is infinitely subtle. So when you're really aware, then that awareness is it is that intelligence which produces transformation. Okay, somebody says, so if you want to manifest a goal, for example, if you want to be a singer, would you have to put more attention on that in comparison to feeling love, etc.? Because love is your natural state. So love, peace, etc. manifests easier than these goals. Um, it's an interesting question. I don't, yeah, maybe. I mean, so kind of depends. Depends on a lot of variables and factors. Um, Depends in part on exactly what you mean and depends on what your conditioning is. Um, but the the main thing I could say about that is just instead of getting lost in the weeds, I would just say be clear about what you want and and prioritize giving attention to that, whatever that is, whether it's being a singer or it's love, whatever it is. So somebody says, I've been continuing to use the Ask framework. Sorry, sorry for the scroll. I don't know why the scrolling isn't working today. Been continuing to use the Ask framework. I recently discovered 5 inches of water under the floorboards and I was panicking. However, I used active relaxation and took constructive actions to remediate this. Great. Yeah, that's fantastic because an interesting thing is that we we only I mean in this particular situation that you're describing is like okay so I mean I assume you this is you own a house uh and so you know this is your house and there's you discover there's water under the floorboards which you weren't expecting and which doesn't exactly please you and so there you are you know that's the situation. And it's like those, as far as it goes, those are the facts. That's that's what can be said about it. But then our minds like to go try to make it into a problem and then try to figure out the solution to the problem and start to get anxious and have all these reactions to it. But actually, that none of that helps. And the fact of the matter is, it's just like, you know, you own a house, unexpectedly, there's water under the floorboards that you're now aware of. Those are the facts. The rest of it is unnecessary noise. So learning how to intervene in that process so that you can act from the clarity of the facts versus all of the thoughts about it is really wonderful. Uh, okay, so somebody says, most nights I also write about what I really, what do I really want via pen and paper. This helps me to keep my attention on what I truly want. Yes, good. Yeah, I definitely recommend uh writing. I really recommend writing by hand and doing it regularly, even just for a few minutes. Somebody says, "Can I live on the roller coaster of life and remain at peace at the same time by simply allowing things to come as they please without clinging or resisting?" Well, that's yes. I mean, my answer to that is yes, sort of. Uh, Depends what you mean by live on the roller coaster, but you can certainly like life is movement. Ex Manifestation is movement. This world is movement. It's always changing. So, uh, the appearance of this world, all of the experiences, all the feelings, all the sensations, all the thoughts, all the images, all the rest of that, uh, that's its nature, is to constantly be moving and changing. Now, what I'm fundamentally proposing is that that is in no way ever an obstacle or hindrance to the underlying reality, which is unchanging, which is already what you most deeply want. And so, yes, I would say for sure that um, that you can that they exist, they coexist in in a way that is perfectly harmonious and in no way ever a problem. So yes, you can know peace at the same time as all of the activity in this life is occurring. And by not clinging or resisting, more accurately, by having awareness and recognizing the impulses of clinging or resisting, you allow yourself then to recognize and acknowledge that peace, which is always here unconditionally, so that you can recognize that they are coexisting. And then you say, or it's better to be intentional, all planned based on what I really want. Uh, and then you elaborate, should I assume a more creator role or a passive one? Um, so the, I mean, that's up to you. Uh, I think that the answer to that depends on a lot of factors. Depends on what's important to you, what you're wanting to learn, what just so many factors. So I can't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that question for any individuals. Only you can know the answer to that. But I will say that in general, uh, it's kind of a somewhat of a false distinction between being intentional or being passive, because I'd say I don't think you can really be passive unless you're intentionally passive. Because otherwise you're going to be reactive. So if you really wanted to be passive, you'd have to be intentionally passive in order to not be reactive. Uh, so there would be an intention, which would be to be passive. And then it's just a matter of, is that what you want? So I definitely wouldn't recommend being intentionally passive unless that's what you want. And there might be and that's probably not an all or nothing thing. I mean, um, many times, in fact, doing nothing uh, is far better, vastly better than simply reacting. If you don't have clarity and you don't know what to do, uh, not in all situations, but in many situations, better to do nothing than to do what you would just habitually do. This is like, I don't know who this quote is should be attributed to, but it's the better. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar. It's like better to be um better. What is this? Better to say nothing and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. So a lot of the time we feel compelled to do something, but what we do is just not the right thing. So it would be better to do nothing unless or until there's clarity about what would be a wiser thing to do. Um, so then you added another clarification. Letting things come as they please, I see as passive. Well, things do come, you could say as they please. Uh, So I would say that I really see it differently. I see that there is uh, intentionality and there is uh, reactivity. So reactivity just means, and reactivity is not always bad. Reactivity, if you have in certain conditions, reactivity is very desirable. You don't want to have, you don't want everything always to be conscious, maybe. I don't know if that's true, but certainly it would be impractical for most of us for everything to be completely conscious. I mean, there's so many bodily functions that you don't want to be conscious of that. That would be very difficult. Um, so reactivity, when something has been very well uh, defined, and it's working well and it's optimized, then it's not a problem for it to be reactive because it's totally it's optimized, so it will react in exactly the optimal way. But um, if you but if it's not optimized, then the reactivity can be problematic, and that's what I was referring to a moment ago, which is that things are happening, and if you feel afraid or whatever, and you therefore believe that you must do something, and you don't have an optimized habit for how to react, then your reaction is not going to be optimal. Therefore, it would be better in most cases to do nothing. So, it's just a matter of being skillful and having clarity about what matters to you, and then you can make choices based on that. But I really don't see. I think being intentional is useful. Know what you want. Have that intention. Uh, that's what I can say about that. Okay, so somebody says, can my idea of what I want be too rigid? Can it ever not be too rigid? Well, yeah, it's for you to explore. Um, I mean, in general terms, yes, your idea of what you want could definitely be too rigid because if it doesn't actually align with what you really want, if your idea of what you want and what you really want are not aligned and you hold rigidly to your idea of what you want, then that doesn't work very well. Can it ever not be too rigid? Yes. I mean, that's part of what this experience is is offering us is an exploration um, of discovering what do I want and how do I work intelligently with that clarity of what I want. So I wouldn't recommend. I mean, by definition, being too anything is not what you want. So if too rigid, then that's not good. I mean, maybe a certain degree of rigidity is useful. Because if there was, you want to have it a little bit firmed up so that it's not just all wishy-washy. You want to have a sufficient clarity, but by definition, you don't want it to be too rigid because too rigid would mean that that you're not adaptable. You're not learning. You're just staying rigidly fixated on something that you thought you knew from the past, and you're not allowing for new clarity to arise. Somebody says, writing what do I not want and writing what I want. Yeah, I mean, if necessary to start, you can start with what you don't want, only if you don't know what you do want, or you don't have any clarity to move in that direction. Um, over time, I would generally say what you don't want is be, becomes less and less useful. I would say it's only useful if you have no other starting point, and then ask yourself, based on that, what do you want instead? Because if most people just stay stuck with what they don't want their whole life, that's all they do. All they do. They just dress that up and they call it by different names, but it's always what they don't want. And that doesn't give good results. So it's good to shift to what you do want. Because if you're focused on what you don't want, which is what most people do, you live in this infinite reality, infinite potential. And you're just walking around and you're just saying, well, I don't want this and I don't want that and I don't want this other thing. Which, if you consider the ratio of however many, that's a fixed number of things, whether it's one thing or 10 things or 100 things that you don't want, no matter how many things you ever determine you don't want, the ratio effectively becomes the same. You have infinity of potential and then a fixed number of things that you don't want, which means by focusing on what you don't want, you never get any more clarity about what you do want because the ratio is always fixed to infinite. So you're not actually ever honing in on what it is that you do want, which is in that infinity. So you really want to start to shift your focus to the what it is that you do want. So instead of that remaining infinity, you start to actually get clear on the specifics of what that is for you. Uh, what you do not want would be opposite of what you want. In a sense, it's not as simple as you say, well, um, I don't want to be poor, therefore I want to be rich. That's too simplistic of a view. That's why I suggest asking the question, what do I want instead? Because the answer to that question, what do I want instead, it may not be what you would consider necessarily to be the opposite of what you don't want. It may be, but it may not be. But that's why I would recommend using the question, what do I want instead? Somebody says, I've had some time off and I feel like I've been lazy, and in my head, I've been beating myself up for not being more productive in my time off, but and I'm only laughing because it's your time off. I assume from being productive in a particular way. So just uh I mean, I get it. We do that, but I think most of us can relate to that. But then I think if I want to be doing anything in the world, I just want to lie down and relax. You think this is okay, or should we prioritize being as productive as possible to achieve our goals? Well, if they're, I would say, comes back to what do you want? So what do you want is, as I said, it's something that we usually think, oh, I know this. It's easy. It's like, what is there to learn here? I've already completed that step. But I think there's so much to learn there. So I would just recommend you come back to what do I want? And not to get the answer and then you're done, but every day, what do I want? And then put those things in order of priority because you can't do everything, not now at least. You can only do one thing at a time. You can only you can only give your attention to one thing at a time. And uh, unfortunately, though, what most of us do is we don't have sufficient clarity. We haven't done the work to get clear on what do we want and to know what's the prioritization of what we want. And so everything that comes into our mind, we just shift our attention to that. So, oh, well, I want an extra $1 million. Great. Oh, and I want a vacation in the Bahamas. Great. And I want six pack abs. Okay. And I'm worried about worried about whoever I'm worried about. Okay. And I heard that thing on the news and that's concerning. Okay. And you just go on from one thing to the next. This is what most people do. And in your case, you've got this idea that I want to lie down and relax. And then you've got this other idea that says, I want to be really productive to achieve my goals. And you haven't gotten clear enough about what's higher priority for you. And it's not higher priority forever. It's just like today, right now, what's higher priority? If you know that, then what happens is, let's say that, and I have no idea what the answer is for you, but if you did the work and you got clear that today what's highest priority is to lie down and relax, then until you've satisfied that, anything else that comes up, you can just say, not now. If the thought comes up, says, oh, but I should be cleaning out the garage. And you say, not now, because I already got clear that what's most important, what's highest priority for me today is to lie down and relax. So you give yourself permission to lie down and relax. And whatever other stuff is coming up, you say, I already did the work to get clear on this. Not now, maybe later. But right now, what's most important to me, and I know this because I already did the work to get clear on it, is to lie down and relax. So you give yourself the permission to lie down and relax, until which time you say, you know what? I'm satisfied that one. I'm done with lying down and relaxing today. Then you're like, okay, great. What's next? What's next on my list? Because you've done the work. You said, okay, number one was lying down and relaxing. I satisfied that one for now. What's next? Well, oh, look, next on my list, most important thing is clean out the garage. Awesome. Now you know what you're going to do. But otherwise, you say, "Oh, I don't know. I really feel like lying down and relaxing, but I should be productive. I should be cleaning out the garage. And then, okay, I'll make myself clean out the garage. And you start trying to clean out the garage, and you say, oh, I don't know. I just really want to lie down and relax. And you just ruin your whole life like this. So that's why I say just take a few minutes every day. Just ask yourself, what do I really want? And write it down. And don't censor yourself. It doesn't matter what, just write. Even if it seems like nonsense, just write it. You're by writing it, you're not holding yourself to that. You're just allowing yourself to do this exercise so that you can get more information. Once you've done that, just take a few minutes, then go back through it and figure out, okay, which of these things are actually important. Put them in order of priority for now, for today. Don't take a long time with this. Take a few minutes. And now you have that clarity. So then you can know, well, this is the thing that's most important to me. Great. Focus on that until you've satisfied that for today or for now. And then do the next most important thing. Is this an absolute foolproof approach? No. But is it simple? Yes. Can it help improve things? Yes. So it's simple, it's easy, it helps. Therefore, it will improve things. So that's my recommendation. All right. Uh, okay. What exactly are you meaning when you talk about love and unconditional love, please? I know it sounds a stupid question, but I'm confused about what exactly is meant by these terms, as no matter how much I practice being aware or doing breath work, I never experience anything I'd call love. Calm, yes. No thoughts, yes, but love, I really don't think so. Well, yeah, I mean, so the way I use the word uh, is to refer to that, which allows everything to be exactly as it is. To me, that's love. You are free to disagree, but that's what I mean. All right. So this person says, I have been filling my head with so many spiritual teachings for the last 8 years instead of having the direct experience they point to, except for a few times, instead of taking action in my external reality, along with managing depression. And right now, I'm in a very challenging life situation. I'm 27 years old in a poor country, living with my parents, struggling on all aspects of life. And on top of that, I have an important exam in 1 month. I procrastinated for a lot of time. And now I'm experiencing stress and regret about not having done my job earlier, and I'm required to make consistent, intense action to just pass. How can I focus on what I want in the midst of all that? Otherwise, what do you suggest? Am I a hopeless case? Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, notice that you're you're focused on things that you don't have any control over. I mean, like you're not gonna. So you're 27 years old. You're gonna change that? No. I mean, time will change that. Next year you'll be 28. You live in a poor country. I mean, unless you have a way, unless you want to change that and you have a way of changing that, then you're not going to change that. Living with your parents, and again, unless you have a way of changing that and you want to change that, you're not going to change that. Struggling on all aspects of life. I mean, first of all, is that true? It can't possibly be true. There's no way. So that's one of those lies that we tell ourselves, and it does no good. So call yourself out on that. You're not struggling on all aspects of life. You're struggling in some very specific ways, but you're not struggling in all ways. I mean, do you struggle to blink your eyes? Hopefully not. You struggle to lie down in your bed? I hope not. Right? I mean, there are many, many, many ways that you're not struggling. In fact, overwhelmingly, you're not struggling. Overwhelmingly, if you really start to think about it. But there are a couple of ways in which you're struggling. And if you think I'm struggling in all aspects of my life, then it's like, what are you going to do about that? That's just that's a recipe for overwhelm, which is what that belief is designed to do. But you can call yourself out on that and then say, well, actually, I'm just struggling in some very specific ways. And then get clear on what are those specific ways. Because if you don't have that clarity, you can't change anything. But if you get the clarity on the specific ways that you're struggling, then with that awareness, you have the ability to make changes. Um, and then you say, on top of that, I have an important exam in 1 month. Okay, are you going to change that? If you can, maybe that would be something to consider. I don't know. Is that a possibility? But if it's not something that you can change, then what's the point in thinking about it? Like, I mean, if the exam is when it is, and you're going to take that exam, then thinking about how it's an important exam that you have in only 1 month, as a way to stress yourself is not useful. Thinking about how you procrastinated for a lot of time, not helpful, because what are you going to do about that? It's already done. Now, and then you say, now I'm experiencing stress and regret about not having done my job earlier. Again, what are you going to do about that? Nothing. So giving attention to that is not useful. Here's the thing. What what do you want? And you have not written that anywhere. I mean, because if you want to pass the exam, then that's one thing. If you don't want to pass the exam, then that's a totally other thing, right? If passing the exam is not important to you, if that's not something that you want, then congratulations, you're in a perfect position. Do nothing. But if passing the exam is important to you, then instead of thinking about, oh, I regret that I didn't study earlier and yada yada, it's like, That's not helpful. What do you want? If you want to pass the exam, then just focus on that. What can you do? Just do that. You can't do more than that. All you can do is what you can do. But if you're focused on all the things that you don't have power over and all the things that you don't want and all the regrets and all the this, that, and the other, guess what? You're going to get a lot more of that stuff. I mean, look, I get it. Not, you would prefer to have different circumstances. You would prefer to live in a wealthy country and to have independent wealth and to have already know all things that you need to know in order to pass the exam. Or you'd probably prefer to have already passed the exam. It's like so many things that you would prefer, and I get it. Who wouldn't? But 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 that doesn't help you in this situation because you could want and wish for those things, uh, but they're actually not they're not the conditions in which you find yourself. So instead, I would just say, just accept the conditions that you find yourself in, even if they seem unfavorable, and then just choose what do you want, and then dismiss any of the thoughts about any of the things that you cannot control or change or do anything about it, and instead just focus on what can you do in order to achieve what you want in the best possible way, and accept also that you might not be able to do that. I mean, sometimes that's just the way it is. Uh, that would be my recommendation. And one more thing. Learn, learn, learn from, we all make mistakes. Mistakes are an inevitable part of life. It's part of the learning process. However, you don't want to repeat the same mistakes. So if you make a mistake, accept that you made the mistake, and then find out what can you learn from that so you don't repeat the same mistake. Because then you say, am I a hopeless case? No, unless you refuse to learn. If you refuse to learn, then yes, it's absolutely hopeless. You can't change anything if you don't learn. But as long as you're willing to learn and you're willing to just, like I said, just accept what you cannot change and then focus on what it is that you can do that can help you to achieve what it is that you want, then you can't really fail in that way. You might fail to achieve something short term, right? I mean, there's a possibility you could fail the exam, but but that's only uh that's only a short-term failure, but it's really just feedback that you can use in order to learn more about uh yourself, what you want, beliefs that you have, habits that you have, so that you can make changes to those things so that you can have more success in what you really want. Somebody says, is peace the absence of turbulence? No. I mean, that would be one way of defining it, but that's not unconditional peace because that's a very conditional peace, right? That would be the peace that it only it only exists when there's an absence of turbulence. But since there is sometimes turbulence, then that peace comes and goes. So the peace that I'm referring to is unconditional peace, and that is here regardless of whether there's turbulence or not. All right. So somebody says, I've noticed I lean toward anxious attachment, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how attachment styles play into dynamics where it feels like a partner is testing or challenging me, almost like a shit test to see if I'm solid and safe. How can I stay grounded and connected in these moments instead of reacting from anxiety or trying to prove my worth? Well, um, I mean, no surprise. It comes back to knowing what you want. So, so the if you don't know what you want, then you you will not achieve it. Uh, so knowing what you want is really important. And so in this case, if we don't have clarity about what we want, we're going to have wrong ideas about what we want. We're going to be making assumptions based on our conditioning, based on what our parents taught us, what television taught us, what all, it's like society taught us. Uh, so if you don't know what you want and society teaches you, well, you should have a romantic relationship. Well, okay, I guess I need a romantic relationship. You get into a romantic relationship, and then you say, well, gee, I don't know what I want in relationship. And so you look to what society has taught you, and society says, well, you should have this type of experience in relationship, whatever that is. And that's going to be different from person to person. Very, very different. But those assumptions are not necessarily the truth. They're just what your conditioning would have you believe. So then you're in this situation, you don't even know what you want. You're you but you feel sometimes as though you imagine that maybe what you think you want is being threatened, right? So you're in this relationship, you think you want this relationship, you think that you have certain assumptions about how to measure whether the relationship is successful or not. And then the your partner is behaving in certain ways, and that threatens your sense of what you think you want in the relationship. 99% of this or more is completely unconscious. And then, because you're not aware consciously of any of that, then you're just reacting because of that fear. And then you are coming up with these hypotheses. Well, maybe it's because she's testing me to see if I'm solid and safe. But is that what you want? Do you want her is it important to you that she feels a certain way? Is it important to you that she wants to be in a relationship with you? I mean, there's so many things that you can just question and examine in order to get more clarity about what you really want. Because when you know what you really want, I believe, and like I said earlier on, I could be wrong about this, but I really believe that what you really want ultimately is unconditional as a foundation. And then everything else can be like icing on the cake. So relationship, no relationship, um, that's secondary. And take this as a suggestion, not as the truth. But I believe, and I'm proposing that that what you really want is unconditional, and therefore the focus on what is conditional will not actually will take you away from, in some ways, what you really want, because your focus is on the wrong thing. Your focus is on that which is changing and changeable, and therefore is going to just feed into this kind of anxiety. I need this relationship. I need this person's love and approval. I need their validation. I need them to want me. Uh, and so, but all of that is changeable. I'm proposing that those are all unconscious assumptions based on programming, societal programming, and it's up to you to question what you really want. And if I'm correct, and what you find is that what you really want is an unconditional foundation, then from my point of view, the good news is that that's always available to you, and you can choose that. So, uh, you're in a relationship, your partner is behaving certain ways, and that triggers certain reactions in you, and you have the opportunity, therefore, to inquire, to notice, does any of this actually harm or threaten what I most truly want? And if what you most truly want is unconditional within yourself, then the answer to that question will be no. It cannot possibly harm or threaten what you truly want, which gives you, you said reacting from anxiety. So you wouldn't react from anxiety because you would know that you already have what you really want. And, uh, and you're willing to allow whatever happens to happen, not to say that you wouldn't have preferences. You can certainly have preferences, but you're not uh, held hostage by those preferences. And you're free to allow, if your partner is like, you know what, I'm only looking for somebody who, where, if I say to jump, they say how high, and you don't seem to be doing that. And you're like, okay, great. Well, I'm glad to know. It's like that's amazing that we were able to get this clarity together. That that's what you want, and I know that that's not what I'm looking for. Awesome. But if you're still believing I need them to approve of me and accept me, and they say you need to say how high when I say jump, then you're going to say how high, but feel miserable. So that's what I can say about that. Well, I can't say you're in the wrong relationship. That's not there is no wrong relationship. This is there are abusive relationships, there are dysfunctional relationships, there's all that, but wrong relationship. No, what would that even mean? It's only wrong if I mean it's not even really wrong, but it's in fact it's never wrong. It just gives you the opportunity to learn. That's it. If you choose not to learn, then that's your problem. But the relationship's not wrong. The relationship is just there offering you the opportunity to learn. And then it's up to you whether you're going to choose to learn. I think there's one more I'm going to respond to, and then we'll wrap up. That is if I can scroll to see it. Oh, no, this is a long one. Oh, no, no, no. This I already responded to this one. Great. Wonderful. Well, then we'll wrap it up. So, thank you to all of you. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and explore these things together. Blessings to you. Take care. Bye for now.